I feel the spirit moving in me. I feel the spirit moving in me.
Well, I thought since today was the Super Bowl, that I'd start off with a Super Bowl example or story about Russell Wilson. Russell Wilson, anybody know who he is? Yeah. We got some football fans here? Yeah. Wow. All right. Well, he was the quarterback that led the Seattle Seahawks to Super Bowl 48 victory in 2014. And he's I think really a prime example of how mindfulness and meditation can enhance our focus, enhance our resilience, and perform under extreme pressure. Throughout his career, Wilson has openly accredited his success to meditation, visualization, and mental conditioning. And his coach was Trevor Mowad, who emphasized the power of neutral thinking, which is a concept where instead of dwelling on the negative or even dwelling on the positive, he taught to remain focused and be present in the moment. And before every game, Wilson engages in deep breathing exercises, guided meditation, and even visualizes throwing the perfect pass or running or beating his opponent, a practice that I've known, that I did when I used to teach karate. I taught the same thing. But Wilson's story demonstrates how mindfulness is more than just a strategy to get over stress. It's a game-changing tool for clarity, resilience, and advanced performance. So just like Wilson, we all experience moments of stress. Anybody? Anybody who's never experienced any stress? But we all have, personal challenges with our friends, with our acquaintances, with our relationships. But what if we could change those experiences? What if we could learn to transform our stress so that it doesn't make us go out on that limb? Have you ever been there? What if instead of feeling overwhelmed, we could see stress as a tool for emotional growth? What if we could see stress as a tool for spiritual growth? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today in this talk titled From Stress to Strength, Reshaping Your Emotional Brain. And that's what we're up to today. We're going to look at how can we actually see stress as a productive element that shows up in our lives, that we can embrace it instead of trying to chase it away. Right? So we're going to look at the science of stress and its impact on our body. I know we're going to get kind of nerdy and kind of science-like for a minute, but don't worry. Sometimes I offer you a pop quiz. I'm not going to do it today. But I am going to offer you a technique that you can use, and you'll be able to tell by the use of this technique whether your life changes or not. I know that when I first understood this, it was a life-changing thing for me, and frankly, something that I'm still working on. So, stress is sometimes comes upon us, and it makes us want to curl up in a blanket or to cover our heads up and not be exposed to the world. True for you? It can make us just want to run and abandon the situation that's happening and not be present for it. So we're going to talk today about how can we be present for it with it when it crashes into our brain like an uninvited guest into a dinner party who comes in and rearranges all the furniture and causes absolute chaos. So what is the main culprit of this? And it's the amygdala. The amygdala is an almond-shaped part of our brain that is the part of that signals the rest of the brain. And it says, maybe you've heard this, everybody panic! Right? It's that part of us that goes, ow! Right? I want to scream. You can tell it's coming because I know for me, it's like my head feels like it's growing as it's filling with blood and my body is feeding the amygdala. And what's interesting, what happens when the amygdala is fed, the frontal part of our brain gets shut off, right? In the prefrontal cortex is where the rational mind is, right? So when the amygdala gets triggered, it shuts off the flow to this reasoning part of our brain. And this is why we can appear to go nuts. You ever been there? And it's like, it's like you find yourself all of a sudden destroying your house, or screaming at your significant other or doing all kinds of irrational behavior. Is because your brain has been sabotaged by the amygdala. And when that happens, we go into a fight, flight, or freeze situation. And you might reflect on times when you've been under a lot of stress and you freeze. Right? I had one of those moments getting ready for the service today because we had a change in the lyrics, and I had to try and figure out how we couldn't get the lyrics on this computer, right? And this computer is not hooked up to the internet because I use it strictly for the service, and I'm trying to figure out how to get it connected, how to get it to print, how to get it to send me an email with the lyrics I wanted to change, and it's like my brain just wasn't having it because I was shut off in that moment. I didn't have access to the rational part of my brain. But fortunately, we had other people who were more centered than I was, que aloha, and found a way to make it happen, to get the lyrics printed so our musicians could have the lyrics for the song they just did. So there's a lot of the series that I've been doing on neuroscience and the brain and spirituality and being present comes from Wendy Suzuki, and she's kind of a neuroscientist extraordinaire, and she shows that and talks about how stress, if it's appropriately handled, can actually strengthen our brains, right? She says, it's kind of like weightlifting for neurons, right? And if we handle it in that way, we actually build stronger neural pathways in our brain that help us to deal with those stressful situations in a productive way. And she says that stress can actually aid in neuroplasticity, building the parts of our brain that help us to deal with challenging situations. And by neuroplasticity, what that means is it's neuro stands for mind, plasticity means plastic, and it's kind of like the brain, our brain is flexible. Used to be, we thought that once we got brain cells, the brain cells you were born with, remember hearing this, were the only ones you ever got? Well, it's not true. Science is finding now we can not only strengthen our brain cells, we can build new brain cells. And so instead of letting stress turn us into a frazzled mess, we can train our brains to transform stress into strength. And that's the essence of what we're talking about today. Because what if stress is our greatest teacher? right? Most of us try, when stress happens, we try and push it away or run away from it. But what if we learned how to use it to actually build our brains? In fact, you might know Deepak Chopra. Anybody ever heard of Deepak Chopra? Of course, we all have. And Rudolph Tanzi tell us that stress isn't just about frazzled nerves and racing thoughts. It's actually a spiritual wake-up call. Take a breath into that. When we are feeling stressed, when you're feeling stressed, it's actually a spiritual wake-up call. Because it's basically saying something that you are thinking isn't working. Something that you are believing isn't working if you get into that frazzled state of stress. So instead of resisting stress like a stubborn toddler who doesn't want to eat broccoli, we can welcome it as an opportunity for transformation. You know, stress is kind of like a pressure cooker of evolution, right? If you think about it, pretty much every significant breakthrough that we have spiritually comes from some kind of when we're pushed outside of our comfort zone. Ever notice? When we decide, you know what, this isn't working for me anymore. You know, freaking out and throwing daggers at the wall in my kitchen isn't working for me anymore. And when those kinds of things happen, we can say, you know what, I'm going to do something different. And isn't that a blessing that we have the opportunity to make changes that affect our lives? And so the key to that, so I love this picture. Sometimes we can feel like we can react to stress like a cat being thrown into a bathtub. And AI created this fun image for me when I asked it to give me a picture of a cat freaking out in a bathtub. So, and the thing that we can do, that we can ask when we are in that stressful state, is to ask, what is this trying to teach me? Right? If we could slow down, take a breath, and ask, what is this situation trying to teach me? Right? Because the reason that we are freaking out is because we have some sort of thought or some kind of belief that something is wrong, instead of breathing into it and taking it in and going, okay, there's something for me to learn here. Wow, if I'm freaking out, there's some kind of truth that the universe is offering me, almost like an angel, offering me an opportunity to experience a new understanding. Are you guys with me? Does this make sense? So we want to be mindful, and this talk is really about mindfulness. It's about training the brain to respond and not react. You see the difference? When we react, we're just like, bam, gone. I'm all over the place. I'm tearing things up. I'm insulting people. I'm hurting people, right? But when we respond, we're doing it with what? With intention, yes? We are choosing to respond that way. I've heard the idea that enlightenment is the ability to respond to life in an appropriate way. Right? That's enlightenment? It means being able to be so focused and so centered and to come from that heart place and to not get into the franticness and to just show up. Doesn't it seem easy? Really? Right? It's that stinking thinking that gets us in trouble, doesn't it? Thinking we're not good enough, thinking we're not smart enough, thinking that we don't have the ability to be present in the moment. So take a breath into that. So what we're really looking at is how can we, instead of reacting on autopilot, how can we train our brain to respond with clarity and calmness? And that's where mindfulness comes in. It's kind of like mindfulness is like a mental pause button, right? Instead of letting the craziness hijack our nervous system like an over-caffeinated raccoon, we can take a breath in and be present, right? Doesn't that sound great? Isn't that what you want? Isn't that what your soul wants? I love what Wendy Suzuki says. She tells us that practicing mindfulness actually shrinks the amygdala, our alarm system. It shrinks it down, right? And in the same way, it strengthens the prefrontal cortex, right? So that's where the blood flows. That's where what gets fed. That's what is stimulated. That's what gives us wise decisions and the ability to do things that come from a place of peace and love. So how do we get there? Well, I got an idea. You know, the good news is you don't need a mountain retreat or a guru named Moonbeam. Everything you have, I'm going to explain to you in just a moment. It's in a technique that I came up with, and I'm calling the STAR technique. It's a simple guide to responding and not reacting. So the next time you feel stress coming on, right, and you feel like this guy where your head is bursting and you might even see red. Anybody ever seen red before? That, like, it's almost like all the blood goes to our brain and we outpicture it and see a bunch of red. So when that happens, the first thing we do in the STAR technique is to stop. Just say, stop. Tell ourselves, stop. And I like to think that we can say, you know what? This isn't working. To say to myself, you know what? This isn't working. This reaction that I'm having isn't working for me. And you might say to yourself, oh, this isn't helpful. So instead of letting that energy take over, just to say, stop, Blaine. Stop. This is not helpful to me. And then take a breath. And that's the second part. The T in STAR is to take a breath. You know, as soon as we take a breath, what happens? We take a deep breath, right? It calms us down immediately. This is really simple. But the idea is not to get keyed into it, not to get wired into it, not to follow down that path that all of us have been down before. Stop. Take a breath, and a deep breath, right? And I like to think of breathing through the nose into the abdomen, a full deep breath. Take one with me now, through the nose, breathing in. And then let it out. Just be present to that. And then the second thing we can do is the A in STAR is access, to access what you're feeling or observe what you're feeling. To ask yourself, what am I feeling right now. I'm feeling anxious. I'm feeling afraid. I'm feeling powerless. I'm feeling like I want to run. I'm feeling hurt. And just, by identifying the feeling, we take the energy out of it, right? Because it's there offering us a signal saying, wow, something's out of balance here. Pay attention, right? And when we bring our attention to it, it's like it goes, okay, thank you. You're paying attention. And then we can ask, what do I want? What do I want in that moment? What might you want? To feel better? Tell me more. Relaxed, empowered, at peace. And just breathe into that and feel that and recognize that that's what you want to feel. And the next part is the R in STAR is to respond, right? Instead of reacting, you are choosing how you're going to respond. Sometimes it might mean getting up and going for a walk. I've been with people when I've been triggered and I said, you know what, I can't continue this conversation with you. I'm going to take a walk. I'll be back in a couple minutes, right? And then once I get my sanity back, right? Once I get my peacefulness back, then we can talk about it. And I think it's also great to stretch, right? Because when all of this stuff is happening, we're pulling all this blood into our brains, into the amygdala. It's really powerful to then do some physical stretching to get that blood moving through your body so that it's nourishing all of your body and strengthening all of your body. And also, saying affirmation is powerful. And to affirm that what you want. Like you might say, I am calm and present right now. I am calm and present right now. Say that with me. I am calm and present right now. So, why does this work? It works because it breaks the stress cycle, right? It breaks the pattern. It breaks the routine, the habitual way that we typically deal with stress. And it also, in the process of all that, it stops the blood flow to the amygdala and increases it to the prefrontal cortex so that we can think rationally, right? So we can be at peace, so we can be present in the moment. And the beauty of this is it can be done anytime. And it takes practice. I invite you to practice it even in minor stress times. When something just kind of pushes your button a little bit, then practice it. Stop. Take a breath. Ask, what am I feeling? Why has this got me upset? What can I learn from this? This is here to teach me something. What is it? And then make the decision of how you're going to respond. It might mean going for a walk. It might mean saying an affirmation. It might be doing some stretching. So take a breath. How does all this feel? Does this make sense to you? Are you willing to try it, I hope, right? I think this is one of the most powerful processes, techniques that we can use to bring peace into our life, to bring peace into the world, to respond to the world. You know, we are all teachers. You are a teacher. You have access to more people in your life than a lot of our teachers that we learn from. You get to practice that every day. I'd like to close with a story about Temple Grandin. Anybody know who she is? Yeah. She's an American scientist, inventor, and an autism advocate who has contributed significantly to the understanding of autism and animal behavior. You know, she was diagnosed with autism at a time when very few people had any understanding of neurodiversity. And for her, every event in her life was a challenge, right? Because with autism, she saw the world differently. And people didn't understand who she was and how she saw the world. And she got the idea to see, to acknowledge her unique way of thinking and seeing the world through thinking in pictures, and patterns, and details. And that this understanding, when she came to embrace it, she realized that she had a whole different way of viewing people with autism. She had a whole way of viewing animals and how to relate to them in a friendly, compassionate way. And she says that rather than shutting down or reacting to the stress, she turned it into innovation. And she designed more humane and efficient livestock handling systems that really revolutionized the industry. Today, she's a professor and autism advocate, and she really promotes the idea that stress doesn't have to be a roadblock. It can be a catalyst for something extraordinary. So we all experience stress. The question is, what can we do with it? What will you do with it? I hope that you'll be inspired to call upon the STAR technique. The next time you feel some stress, you feel anxious, to stop. Take a breath. Access your feelings. How am I feeling? How do I want to feel? What is it that's not working for me? And then make the determination to respond with intention. Stress is the fire that forges strength. When we stop resisting it and start working with it, we just don't survive. We thrive. I transform stress into strength with mindfulness and deep breathing. I am resilient. Say this with me. I transform stress into strength with mindfulness and deep breathing. I am resilient. Yes, you are. I invite you to close your eyes and let's spend a short time in meditation. And just breathe in, letting go of all the words, all the thoughts. And I invite you just to be present right here, right now, in this moment. Breathing in. And I like to do a little breathing exercise as part of the meditation. I call it the block breathing method. Basically, it's inhaling for 4 seconds, holding for 4 seconds, exhaling for 4 seconds, and holding the exhalation for 4 seconds. So I invite you to, let's do this together. Breathing in, holding, exhaling, holding, breathing in, holding, exhaling, holding, breathing in, holding, exhaling, holding, and then just breathe normally in and out, relaxing into this moment. Knowing that you are a powerful expression of truth. That your mind and heart are filled with the divine essence of love and light and power. You are perfect in every way. You are loving and kind, compassionate, peaceful, joyful, wise, beautiful, magnificent. Breathing in and breathing out. And I invite you to begin to bring your awareness back to this moment. To open your eyes when you're ready. Namaste. Why don't we stand and let's pray together the prayer for protection, and then we'll join hands in a circle and sing the peace song. So for ourselves, for this ministry, for the world, the light of God surrounds us, the love of God enfolds us, the power of God protects us, and the presence of God watches over us. Wherever we are, God is. God bless you, friends.
Where I live, they're all raised.